Hey guys, welcome to MirabellaTV. I'm going to be trying something very different today, different than our usual programming. Today, I'm going to be providing a teaching message that I wrote. It's my first one ever. I'm currently working to become a pastor, so I'm in a training program for that, and kind of proud of it. And I think if it could even help one person, then it's worth me doing this. So I'm going to do it and provide that teaching. Please have some grace with me. And like I said, this is my first time even doing this message, my first time writing any kind of a message like this. So I will be reading from it here, and I will be providing it for you. Thank you so much for joining. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell if you want more teaching like this. Make sure you leave a positive comment if you could. Leave a little thumbs up. And away I go. I'll get started. All right, so here's my first go around with the teaching. I'm going to do the best I can to try to be smooth here. Kind of nervous, but hey, I'll get better at it this way. So here's the teaching. Matthew 14:24-33, walk on water. Now this is Matthew 14:24-25. If you want to follow along in your own Bible, or if not, you just want to hear the teaching, that's perfectly fine as well. I'll get into it. Meanwhile, the boat was some distance from the land, battered by the waves. Because the wind was against them, Jesus came toward them, walking on the sea very early in the morning. So, Jesus may allow a storm in your life to set up for an amazing revelation. That's my point on this one. So Jesus told the disciples to get into the boat, as we see in Matthew 14:22. Immediately, he made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. So he put them in the boat. He's like, hey, get in the boat, go into the sea. He knew there was going to be a storm. Jesus knows everything. There was no mistake of this. There was no thought. Now, maybe Jesus didn't know. He knew. Jesus was fully aware that the storm was coming. He was fully aware the waves would be crashing against them. He knew the wind would be blowing. He had just taught the crowds, and the disciples were witness to amazing miracles. The disciples at this point, sorry, I lost my place. Like I said, this is a dry run. Have some grace with me. The disciples at this point in time were witness to many miracles and had a front row to teaching straight from Jesus. So this is Jesus teaching. Miracles are happening. They're completely amazed, and then he sends them out into the water. However, they did not fully grasp who Jesus was yet at this point in time. Like many people in this world, they weren't sure who Jesus was. They didn't really know yet. They had not personally experienced the revelation that Jesus was in fact God. If they did have an idea of that, it was not locked in so that there was no doubt. With no pretext, Jesus approached the disciples who were in a panic during a very rough storm. He was a stark contrast to the raging storm around him, peacefully walking on water and performing an impossible miracle. Sometimes in our own life, we might face a hard situation. An illness, an unexpected expense, really any hard situation. These can feel like a storm. These situations can be equally upsetting and terrifying. We may not see a way out. Are there any times in your life that you can point to a trial or a storm that God allowed in your life? I know I can. Have there ever been any situations where you were completely overwhelmed, painted in a corner, pushed against the wall? Your cart was tipped upside down. Another way of putting it. I had a lot of times like that in my life. It really got my attention. Maybe that was the point of it happening in your life too. I can point to many times when God used a hard situation to get through my thick skull about some very specific truths He wanted me to have no doubt about. Sometimes a storm is the best way of conveying this to us. When we are in a storm, we can't lose sight of what God is trying to do through that storm. Why was it allowed in our life? Did we bring it? Is this our storm? Did we mess up? Or is this something that was just inevitable that I'm going through now that's focusing my mind towards a specific thing? We need to keep our eyes open to see God approaching us in the storm. He may have led you into the storm, but it is not to destroy you. He may have something very important he wants you to know. So think about that next time you're in a storm. God may be trying to talk to you. Now, when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. Immediately, Jesus spoke to them. "Have courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." Now, the point I'm trying to make with this section here, sometimes the miraculous and supernatural nature of God is beyond our understanding. Plain and simple. The disciples saw something they could not possibly understand. They saw Jesus approaching them in a raging storm. They lived at a time when demonic possession and evil spirits were not doubted in any way. They assumed that to seal their doom, an evil spirit or a ghost was coming to destroy them. This was terrifying to them. Rightfully so. So much that they cried out in fear. When was the last time you cried out in fear about something? Not many times, I'll bet. Cried out in fear. Immediately after they cried out, Jesus spoke to them. He told them to have courage. He told them not to be afraid. He said, "It is I." I can imagine the stunning contrast of their emotions, from terror to awe, from doubt to miraculous hope, from seeing their demise to witnessing the impossible revelation that Jesus was walking to them on waves in a storm. Walking, comforting them. Sometimes a situation can seem impossible. Sometimes there's no logical way out. A personal experience of mine illustrates this perfectly. When I was 23, I went into a hospital with diabetic ketoacidosis. This is a true story of my own life. And diabetic ketoacidosis is many times fatal. It's very rough on the body. It causes damage, and it kills a lot of diabetics every year. I was unable to keep food down. I was too weak to walk and had to be wheeled around in a wheelchair by my mom. My blood sugar, when they finally told me what it was 862, which is enough for 8 people to remain alive. 8. In one person, however, this is a toxic amount of sugar to be in your blood. The degree of my illness at this point was bad enough that every doctor that was attending to me must have believed that I was about to die. 99% of people as sick as I was would have passed away. There was no reason logically, none, for me to even be telling you this now. That's how bad it was. I did survive. Not only did I survive, but a medical doctor used the word miracle. Fact. I knew at that moment the very same feeling of relief that the disciples must have felt. The feeling that even though I was experiencing disaster, God was with me. He saw me. When we are going through a bad situation, we need to remember who we belong to. We are children of God. He loves us more than we could possibly understand. He knows the count of the hairs on our head. Even though our situation may be impossible, We worship the God of the impossible. When nobody can get us through it, He can. He can. Matthew 14:28 through 29. Lord, if it is you, Peter answered him, command me to come to you on the water, he said. So Jesus is saying this. Come. And climbing out of the boat, Peter started walking on the water and came toward Jesus. I'm going to read that again. Peter started walking on the water and came toward Jesus. Point number 3 here. When we are focused on God, we can do what we think is impossible. See, Peter was always a bold person, sometimes to a fault. Sometimes Peter spoke before he thought. In this case, Peter showed boldness and loyalty to Jesus. Even though what he was saying was beyond his understanding, he wanted to be a part of the miraculous that he was witnessing. He wanted to be a part of this moment, and he was. He wanted to be a part of whatever impossible miracle Jesus was bringing into their lives. He, in that moment, fully believed in and fully trusted Jesus. With Jesus' simple invitation come, Peter was emboldened to do the impossible. He was stretched beyond his physical limitations, and he was empowered to do the miraculous through Jesus, who was rewarding his faith. As long as Peter was focused on Jesus, the impossible was made possible. As long as his eyes were upon God, the impossible was possible. So imagine seeing something truly impossible like this, being so close to the magnificent glory of God. An impossible miracle. Jesus is casually strolling on water. He is assuring courage. He is telling them not to fear. Imagine being so moved that you ask to be a part of this miracle and God says yes. Then you step out onto the water and every step is secure and holds you up. You are focused on Jesus, focused on the reality of this miracle. It is beautiful because the faith in this moment was so pure. God asks us for faith. He delights in it and rewards faith. Just imagine that. That pure and perfect moment of God has me. Not only does God have me, because of my faith, I am a part of this miracle. Now remember Peter in this moment when you are experiencing the miraculous. Remember his perfect, simple faith in this moment. Perfect. Remember that. That is what created that moment of miracle. The simplicity, the fullness of that faith. Now in Matthew 14:30-31, but when he saw the strength of the wind, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me! Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand, caught hold of him, and said to him, you of little faith, why did you doubt? You of little faith, why did you doubt? Now, my point I want to make with this is, when we lose sight of God in our life, we begin to fail and fall. But when we call out to God, He answers immediately. Now, it may not be the answer we're looking for, but God is waiting for you to call out to Him. Peter was literally walking on turbulent water, step after step landing firmly on the sea. He was taking part in the same miracle that Jesus was. He was doing exactly what Jesus was doing. Then his flesh began to take in all that was impossible about what he was doing. It's like, I'm walking on water. This is incredible. I'm walking on water. This is impossible. That's the voice I'll bet he heard. The wind was rushing past him. The sea was stirring and churning. Peter was a seasoned fisherman. He knew the sea and how dangerous it could be. His mind began to chatter at him, I imagine. He began to panic and doubt. When fear entered his mind, he began to sink. In his panic, he cried out to Jesus. Jesus answered him immediately because Jesus was with him. I love how that word was used twice in regard to Jesus' response. He did not hesitate. He answered and caught hold of Peter. He comforted him and asked him why he had doubted. He did not say Peter had no faith, but little faith. Can we relate to this at all? I know I can. The flesh and its weakness can be so loud it can yell, "My situation is impossible. I'm too sick. I'm in too much pain. I've made too many mistakes. You don't know what I've done. You don't know how many times I've failed. There's no way this can happen for me." We take our eyes off of God. Our perfect faith becomes muddy, diluted. We start to try to do the lifting ourselves, and we sink. We lose sight of the fact that our walk is with Jesus, just like Peter, who was walking with Jesus when he was planting his feet on the water. But then he started walking with Peter, and he began to sink. When we are in a storm, remember not to lose sight of who is with us. Jesus is with us, and the miracle is his. But if we do lose sight, as we are prone to do, call out to him. He will be there, even though his answer may not be what you want it to be. He will answer immediately. You see, Jesus knows you. Jesus chose you. If you're listening to this and it's impacting you, this is for you. Now, Matthew 14:32-33, when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those in the boat worshipped him and said, "Truly, you are the Son of God." I'm going to read that one more time. Because of its simple beauty. When they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those in the boat worshipped him and said, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The point I'm trying to make here, when God is with you, your storm will resolve, and you will have your revelation that Jesus is who he says he is. You see, the moment Jesus got into the boat, the wind ceased. The purpose of the storm was over. It was done. Jesus had shown in a profound way that he was who he said he was, the Son of God. Once the disciples saw this, they could see and have no doubt that Jesus was indeed the Son of God. Jesus had used the storm to refine their faith. He had used even their fear and panic and doubt to solidify their faith. He had used Peter, not only believing, but also failing to believe, to teach his disciples, without a single doubt, who was in their boat. They were in awe, amazed, but most of all, convinced. So they saw an impossible situation unfold. It included fear, panic, impossible feats, and the simple revelation that Jesus was who he said he was, the Son of God. They saw their brother Peter walk on water. They saw him freak out and sink. They saw Jesus' gentle rebuke. What has God brought you through? I'll bet you have at least one story where you can't say anything except, wow, God is so good. Once we have the message that God wants us to receive, the storm is over, because no storm lasts forever. God is probably trying to tell you something. Pay attention during the storms. God wouldn't allow them if there was no reason behind them. Remember who is in your boat. Remember that Jesus is with you. So I made all these points to illustrate and to bring to mind, life is hard. Without Jesus, it's impossible. Whether or not we have chosen to accept Jesus in our life is the most important decision we will ever make. Once we have chosen him, we must remember not to lose sight of him. If we focus on our walk with him, if we are bold in our faith, he will delight in us and share the miraculous with us. Make no mistake, God is faithful. If you haven't chosen Jesus, now is the best time. Pray this prayer with me. Lord Jesus, thank you for dying in my place for my sins. I don't deserve it, but you love me so much. Thank you for rising again and defeating sin and death. I want to live my life for you. No turning back. Now, if I can have a heart moment with you guys. If you're watching this and you've gotten this far, I just want you to know that God isn't mad at you. God is for you. God isn't here to judge you. God isn't here to condemn you. God is here to give you free will. Now, you have the will. If you want to remain separated from God forever, God will honor that. But if you want to be with God, if you want to have peace, if you want to have freedom, if you want to have hope, if you're done failing and trying it again and again and again and again and again and never getting anywhere and feeling so frustrated and alone and without hope, I want to tell you that there is hope in Jesus Christ. Now, I'm going to save my full life story for another time. But I want to make it clear that me doing this isn't so I can become popular. Me doing this isn't so that, people will hear me preach and go, wow, he's such a great preacher. No, I want you to experience what I have in my life. I want you to experience freedom from your addictions. I want you to have hope that things can change in your life. Because God gives you beauty for your ashes. He does. God gives you another way to live. And living for him is the best decision I've ever made. There is hope. There is freedom. There is goodness. There is peace and joy. Not happiness, but joy. True joy through Jesus Christ. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening. Hey, thank you so much for joining me. Please, like I said, have some mercy and grace. This is my first time teaching. I wasn't looking at the camera the whole time. Had to do a lot of reading. It's from the heart. Hey, Jesus is for you. Remember who's in your boat. Okay? Thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell if you want more teaching like this. I'd definitely be happy to do that. Leave a comment, positive if you could, please. But anyway, thank you for joining. Follow us on Instagram, Mirabella_TV. Become a member of our channel. We could really use the help and support. And check out our merch. Basically using that to help save up for Mirabella's college and give her a little bit of money. And thank you so much for your time and for being with us. Greatest gift you can give us is to subscribe and tell somebody else about this teaching if you liked it. Thank you, and God bless. Have a great day.